Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So, with the Ordeal coming, I effectively took the liberty to update the old Grandmaster Gauntlet spreadsheet. Before we go any further, I do want to remind you guys that this is a video made before the content goes live. So, we do not know if the nodes will be changed or any other changes, that will happen. However, I have done a couple of runs of Grandmaster's Gauntlet just to rehash myself with the fights. And last night I did an itemless run effectively, so I'm going to go over the teams that I used, as well as some of the other better options listed in here, and which fights are kind of the most dangerous. Again, all of this is subject to change for the Ordeal, because we do not have the full quest details with the nodes and stuff like that. So first of all, I'm gonna go over my run and MVPs and the fights to be kind of careful for. You kind of have a little cheat sheet here. Must have answers for Sasquatch, because if you can't outdamage the regen, you can't finish the fight and it's super hard. Cherax, that's a crazy fight with crazy power gain and lots of energy damage, so you do want to have a solid answer for that. Spider-Ham can be an absolute nightmare because there's a lot of extra power gain and obviously his evades and everything else. It's just a tricky fight. Comparatively speaking, Mojo, those degens can really take the wind out of your sails. Eye-Bomb, you obviously need Poison Immune, and Korg is one of the kind of nastier fights in there. Additionally, you do have some fights like Void and Killmonger that are fairly rough. Where you also need Hell Plan, basically. But, so Dr. Doom, that is a fairly basic fight where ideally you want large or extra large champion. Extra large is the best, because then you can effectively ignore the vast majority of the nodes and you only need to deal with the bubble shield. And Onslaught works like a charm. Ideally you push Dr. Doom to level 2s, so you are more free to knock him down with heavy attacks. That's fairly straightforward fight with Onslaught. Terrax, I used Wiccan actually, and Wiccan's great for it. But so is Shatra, because Shatra can regen all of the energy damage taken in the fight with her level 3. And in general, her ability set is quite good for that fight too. So I'm planning on using Shatra, but rank 2 Wiccan does this fight without issues either. I have heard that some people do plan on using Onslaught, which is a viable option, but it still could be a bit tricky. Then we have Vision, and the key with Vision fight is effectively you need an AI modifier, something like Infuriate on Hercules, which we cannot use, but namely it's going to be Taunt or Taunt-like abilities. So She-Hulk, Deathless She-Hulk, Spider-Ham can do this fight, Starhand Spider-Man can do this fight, and there you go. So I used Deathless She-Hulk, went super easy, no real issues there. Against MODOK, I used Serpent. Now, Serpent doesn't directly counter MODOK's auto block, but Serpent is a great champion to kind of whack MODOK's block with and then drop a special attack, because the entirety of that special attack is going to be unblockable, so you do not need to worry about the auto block there. It was a fairly straightforward affair. Spider-Ham, I used Onslaught. It was, again, fairly straightforward. You can actually use that fight to heal up thanks to willpower. Serpent can also do this fight very, very well, because he completely shuts down the evade without relying on debuffs, because Spider-Ham's debuff immune. But that's why kind of Onslaught is awesome, because every time you parry, you're going to get that passive stun there. So there we go. Spider-Ham, for me, I prefer Onslaught, but Serpent does it perfectly too. Then on path 2, Weapon X, I use Shuri. You can use different champions there. Weapon X is kind of, fine. He just has enhanced regen, but you can, kind of get around it with, hitting him mainly when his charges are on cooldown. But Shuri is kind of great because he does not regenerate dot damage. Then against Thing, I used Serpent. The only real thing to know there is that your level 1 has 7 hits. And again, most champions can be used against Thing, because it just have fight altering, not excluding mechanics, if that makes sense. So, in theory, any champion can get down that Thing, because the only thing that's happening there is like oscillate and unblockable special attack. So as long as you know how to fight Thing, it's fine. Korg is a bit of a trickier case. I have soloed that fight with both Onslaught and Serpent. Onslaught's easier, but Serpent's not too tricky either. So Serpent in general is kind of like MVP. If you want to force it, you can use Serpent against so many fights here. Then we have Dragon Man, where I use Deathless She-Hulk. My Deathless She-Hulk was only rank 2, but we'll see how it holds up in the Ordeal, where the health pools will be much bigger. But yeah, it was fine, no real issues there, because Deathless She-Hulk does have the Wither, the one that reduces the power gain on level 2, and then you obviously make AI more aggressive, so no real issues there. Black Panther Civil War, I did it effectively with Serpent. Serpent's very good. He doesn't counter the footloose nodes and stuff like that, so you have to get a bit of pause in there, but yeah, Serpent works fine. Shatra should do quite well too, with her atrophy, making sure that the footloose and expires quite quickly with Unstoppable and a weight buff. Path 3 starts off with Serpent's playthings basically, so we have Serpent against Nightcrawler, just shut down their weight. You can use any champion really against Nightcrawler because you can parry in that fight, and you can just parry and do a couple of hits. And then Spider-Gwen, a weight counter is borderline mandatory. In good old days, if we didn't have weight counter, we could just hit Spider-Gwen's block all day, and that kind of worked too. But yeah, Serpent, makes those two fights rudimentary. Then we have Domino, where I use Shuri. It has Power Shield, which is not necessarily the best node for Shuri, but, you can still get by with using dot damage primarily. Then we do have Mojo, which is one of the fights that still kind of gets me worried, because if the health pools are bigger and you start taking the degen because he auto-completes his prompts, then it could turn out to be quite tricky affair. But still, Deathless She-Hulk got me through that relatively well. Immortal Abomination, it's a very basic fight, and you just effectively need somebody that's poisoned me, and that's about it. Path 4, APOC, Shuri, it's just, again, relatively straightforward APOC fight where you do not want to use a robot. Shuri did it fine, but I'm sure you can do it with like Thanos and a Serpent and a whole bunch of different champions. Sasquatch, I did it with Deathless She-Hulk, but previously I had soloed it also with Onslaught, because Onslaught's passives also do damage, so that's not a major issue. Killmonger, again, Shuri is kind of very, very good for it, because obviously she makes all hits non-contact. You do give him quite a bit of power initially, but once you kind of transition to primarily inflicting shock passives, on Killmonger's power gain isn't really an issue. Yeah, you do need to be careful of how much bleed damage you take and how often you parry, but it wasn't like a major problem, at the very least in the Grandmaster Gauntlet run. We're gonna see how it is in Ordeal. If it is a major problem, Onslaught can do this fight fairly well too. It's super slow, where you effectively just throw infinite heavies and you never get through a special attack, but there you go. Against Void, both Onslaught and Serpent performed exceptionally well, because Power Shield supercharged the damage and their special attacks kind of push away the opponent from you, so you do not get the debuffs from the long distance relationship, and you do have multiple hits on specials, so you kind of manage Void's debuffs on yourself fairly well. Against Nick Fury, you can use just about anyone. I chose for it to be Serpent, and Deathless Thanos was also a fairly easy Serpent solo both times. So there is like an MVP shortlist here that I have also provided for you guys. After I have actually done my run, I'll obviously update it, and then is when I'm gonna make this spreadsheet fully available for you guys. I mean, I can make it available for you guys if you want, but again, just keep in mind that this is pre-content release, because last time I posted a guide of what I'm planning to do for Epoch of Pain. I'm getting comments like today and yesterday on that video. It's like, what is this guide? It's inaccurate. You can't use Bullseye in that lane because he's got no debuffs. Well, yeah, because that was initial plan. So again, to make it clear, this is initial plan for the Ordeal. It will change based on what Kabam does with the content. But some champions that do perform the best. Serpent is just borderline MVP. I mean, borderline must. I'm not gonna say must have, but he's as close to must have as can be. Onslaught's great for it as well. Kushala does Terrax very well, which is quite rare, and then you can use her for a handful of other fights, like, Domino and a few more. Neferi does very, very well. He's great against Terrax, and you can use him for majority of the science-required fights. She-Hulk and Deathless She-Hulk both are exceptional for a lot here. Jack-O-Lantern can kind of replace Shuri for most part. Omega Sentinel can do most of the fight Shuri can, with the exception of Killmonger. Well, maybe Killmonger actually as well. Yeah, you could technically try and do that fight. It could be tricky. Professor X is great if you're good with Professor X. We have Falcon that still does quite well. We have Shang-Chi. I actually listed Shang-Chi twice accidentally, so my bad. We're gonna add somebody else in that instead at a later time, but it's fine. Shang-Chi is quite good against Void and Black Panther Civil War with your slows and stuff. Then we have I-Hulk, who does several of the science nuki fights. Actually, you know, if you have rank 3 I-Hulk, I think you could have a lot of fun in this quest. So you have Shuri, Northstar, Wiccan, Warlock, Guillotine 2099, Starhand Spider-Man. You can also do the Vision fight, which is quite significant. You have Bishop, quite solid core counter there. You have Void, Sinister, Thanos. Initially in my first run, I did have Thanos with me, and he's good. But if you have Serpent, there's no real need for Thanos, in my opinion. The only fight Thanos kind of can do that Serpent can't, I would say, is the Immortal Abomination, because of the poison immunity for most part. Medusa can be quite good. Then we have Diablo, who's also surprisingly good for several of the fights. We have Overseer, Morbius, Black Cat, Titania, Ironheart, Quicksilver, Massacre, Dazzler, again, primarily for that core, and Hulk. So those are kind of the MVPs. I have listed here some of the more, you know, popular, more obvious options currently. There are not all of them here, but you can take a look at the fights and, you know, some fight recommendations of champions that I definitely know can do those fights. Obviously, there will be more. Again, can make this okay. I will make this available to you guys in the video description. So I will make a clean tab for you. So this is going to be option list, fights and options. Then this is going to be my plan. Before release. And then I'm going to copy this. This is going to be an empty name. Empty sheet. There we go. And this is where, if you want to plan your run, where you can do so in a relatively organized manner with the empty list, with the MVP list provided below. So, I hope you found this useful. Again, I will make a follow-up to this video after I actually get to do the ordeal. But for now, hope this was useful, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So, we have all the information about